You can't and you don't need to solve everybody's problem. But executive leadership is the key to carrying people on one path or the other. So when I see these things, when I see protests, when I see federal law enforcement fighting with local law enforcement, that is not who we are. When I see people that have different lifestyles or different faiths, and just mentioned the church shooting. We had a Christian attack a Mormon community. Like, these are the things that we cannot, as a country, we cannot just watch and justify. I wish I could go to all of these and say, hey, there's a better way to do this. It's not going to solve everything, but there is a better way. Hey there, I'm Sheriff Chris Swanson, and you're entering a world gone good.
Hello, my name's Steve, and this is the place where we shine the light on everyday people making good happen each and every day. Welcome to World Gone Good. The holidays are upon us, and you, yes you, need some good gift suggestions. How about a good cozy mystery or three? I offer three because that's how many options you now have with my series, The Dog Walking Detectives. Drown Town, Murder Unmasked, and Season Slayings are each and all available. Just john on over to Barnes & Noble or Amazon sites to find them. I promise you a good time with some good mysteries and good laughs. I know the author personally because he's me, so I can vouch for him because he's me. And on his behalf, me, as always, we say thank you for your support. Today, we focus on our word of 2025 with a good guest who is all about it. What's our word again? Community. And who is this good guest? Well, I'm going to let Don Lemon tell you. Take a listen to this clip from CNN that is from more than 5 years ago.
There are also moments of people coming together. In Flint, Michigan, the sheriff put down his baton and listened to protesters.
We want to be with y'all for real. So I took my helmet off and laid the batons down. Yeah. I want to make this a parade, not a protest. Come on. You got little ones here, you got dogs, so what's up? So listen, I'm just telling you, these cops love you. That cop over there hugs people, so you tell us what you need to do.
Walk with us! 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 Walk with us!
Let's walk with us! Let's walk with us!
That was Genesee County Sheriff Chris Swanson, and he joins me now. Sheriff, I'm sorry, but our time is short, but for the breaking news, you understand what's happening on the streets all over the country. You are being called an inspiration for how you worked with that march and for peaceful, making things peaceful. What was going through your head in that moment?
Well, I'm going to tell you, I couldn't do my part if I didn't have Johnny Franklin, Quan Adams, Jeff Hawkins. They were community leaders in that group that saw that I wanted to hear what they had to say, that we wanted to let them voice their opinion. That's what the frustration is. You need to let the people talk. And when those three brothers stepped up and I gave a big bear hug and I said, what do you need? They said, walk with us. And that's the change. You got to listen to the people and walk with them.
It's very different, Sheriff, if you let me jump in. It's very different of what we saw today, this sort of militaristic state playing out in Washington, and the president saying he's going to deploy the military here in America to prevent violence. What's your reaction to that? Do you want that in your city?
In Flint, Michigan, we had protesters. We had protesters who remembered the message of George Floyd, just like Mr. Crump said. That's the focus that we had that day. We have been blessed to have community leaders that saw the message, that acted, and has set the tone across the nation. My heart breaks for those cities. You know, you report on New York City that we're being watched by the entire world, right. And we are one nation, one blood. And I'm going to tell you, it's the protesters who put that voice out that need to be heard. We can't not lose that focus.
Wow, a lot has happened in 5 years, hasn't it? We're watching ICE go into communities. We're watching the National Guard being brought out. We're watching governors fight for the rights of their states and people fight for their own rights, and it's all divisive. But Sheriff Chris Swanson has a goal of bringing people together, and he's done so and continues to do so by connecting with others to share the importance of, that's right, community. We here at World Gone Good, we're thrilled and honored to connect with him ourselves, and so happy we get to share his good message with you. We could not have selected a better guest to close out the year together. Here comes Sheriff Chris Swanson to talk about the good of community, listening to others, and so much, much more. So here's where we're going to start. Kind of an interesting question. Maybe, maybe not. What did you want to be when you grew up, when you were a kid?
I always knew I was going to be in public service, and it's not a cliche. I was never in the military, but my first earliest costumes in Halloween is dressed up as an Army and a police officer. My dad was a Detroit police officer. My grandfather was a Detroit police officer. It's been in my blood, as they say. I've always helped people. I've always just wanted to be in crisis and try to find order. I knew I was going to be a policeman when I was a little kid.
Wow, where does that stem from? Is it because you saw your parents doing it and your grandparents, or is it just an innate feeling you had that you could put yourself out there?
Yeah, I think part of what you said is accurate. When it comes to this kind of a profession, you have to want to be in crisis. And I think there's a gear that people have that when you see death and violence and brokenness and you're able to bring order out of it. I've been doing it for 33 years and I've seen a lot. And I still choose to be optimistic and inspirational. I think that's something that draws me to this field because I bring hope, I save lives, but I also deal with tragedy. I think it's just part of in certain people's DNA to do certain things.
Tell us about Genesee County. Where is it? What kind of county is it? What kind of people? I mean, give us an overview of where you live.
It's a tough place. It's in the Midwest in the state of Michigan, and our home city is Flint, Michigan. And you might know it for a couple reasons. Number one, the water crisis in 2016, where we had poisoned water because of a bad government business decision that left 100,000 people out in the most vulnerable position when you couldn't bathe your babies in mixed formula and you couldn't drink the water. And then fast forward in 2020 when the George Floyd protests were happening and we chose to do something different in Flint and Genesee County. Those are two big staples. But I can tell you, Flint is also the home of the UAW, home of General Motors. Flint and Genesee County is a great place. It's a mix of a number of cultures. The city of Flint has about 79,000 people. The whole county has about 400,000. We're approximately 25% African American, and the rest is other cultures and ethnicities. We have inner cities, we have wealth, we have farms, we have manufacturing, airports, railways, expressways, and rivers. It's a cornucopia of culture.
And you grew up kind of blue collar.
100%. I bought my first pony when I was 9 years old. I paid cash for Molly, and I did it because I sold golf balls and gum at school, and I collected pop cans, and I had it for 18 years. I grew up working hard.
Where on the Mitten in Michigan are we talking? I know about the Mitten.
Nice.
Whereabouts?
So we are literally about center right,
okay.
of Michigan.
Okay.
If you were to point, it's right between your thumb and your forefinger where those two intersect.
Oh, that's hilarious. I have a friend who's from Manistee. She used to hold up her hand and go, I'm from Michigan. This is the Mitten. And she'd hold up she'd point like right, I can't remember. It was like right in between her like ring finger and her pinky. And she's like, I'm from right here. And we're like, okay.
Right? There you go. It's our hand map. You know what's interesting too about Michigan? It's surrounded by the largest bodies of fresh water in the world, all the Great Lakes.
That is correct.
Yep.
And then we're going to get on Jeopardy here, and we're not going to name them all. One of them is Lake Superior. But okay. So, and Lake Michigan, that's always the easy one to go with. But
that's right. Exactly.
You have, I can feel it in you, and it's our word of 2025 for this show, community. Talk to us about community.
Well, I think the final part of that word is what means the most, and that is unity. Unity is common ground that brings us together. Unity does not mean uniformity. It doesn't mean weakness. It doesn't mean compliance. Community is strength. And when you bring people together, just like you and I, we've never met in person, but I can already tell if we were going to go grab a cup of coffee, we would have hours of conversation. See, that's what community is. And not just people that look like you, believe like you, live like you, but finding people that have interesting perspectives and just ask the question, tell me about this, or how did you grow up? Just like what you're doing on your podcast. It's perfect.
Right. Well, because I find so much of the world right now is so divisive, and it's also, whether it means to be or not, it's sort of like we're all so wrapped up in our phone and putting out this version of ourselves. And did anybody notice me? And did anybody like what I said? And am I getting validation? And so much of community is asking the question of someone else and shutting up and listening.
Yeah.
And I say that kindly, right? So I think that's so much of that what we try to accomplish here is meeting people like you and who understand that. And how has that affected you as a sheriff?
I think it keeps people safe. I've got data to prove it. When you ask the question, what is it you need us to do? Those closest to the problem will give you the answer. I learned that as a young paramedic, and I'm still a licensed paramedic at 53 years old. I've been a medic since I was 20. I saw my first violent death at 18 years old. A man shot himself in front of his wife, and that caused me to become a paramedic before I was even a police officer in 1994. And can I tell you, when you are a medical profession, whether you're a medic or a trauma doctor or a nurse, you have to ask the question, where do you hurt? And they'll tell you, but we live in a culture now where we do one of two things. We either tell people, oh, you don't hurt because you're not supposed to hurt, or this is where you should hurt, and this is what I'm going to do. Well, neither one of those are the answers. When someone needs something, just ask them. And that's the answer that you need to listen to.
That's so true. And something really interesting you also talked about is like, you have to have a switch in you, especially in what you do. I'm great. And I'm in terms of if you're in a crisis, you want me there. I'm fantastic in a crisis.
I love that.
I get really calm. You'd be very, I don't know that I'd make a great police officer, because I don't know that I could stand and listen to people lie to me constantly.
Yeah.
or tell me their version of things and hear a completely other version of something else.
Yes.
As I imagine you do. But how do you have that innate switching you to bring a calmness to situations? And then I want to follow up with that and ask you, like, when you get through a really dangerous situation, a really crisis moment, do you have that come down, when the endorphins, with a rev down afterward? How do you
Yeah.
handle all that?
Well, to your first question, I'm like you. I love to be in the middle of crisis. I said it earlier when we were chatting, because I bring a sense of leadership and a sense of I got this. I want you to know when you need something, call Chris, and that's been going on my whole life. And I really look back and I'm thinking, how did I have my friend circle older than me? And I was able to be tapped into when people just needed the wildest assistance. It's just, people that need something are going to probably ask the question, well, who can help? And throughout my life, not to be egocentric, people would commonly say, well, call Chris, he'll fix it. I love that. It's my validation, as you used earlier just a few minutes ago. Validation is what I know I'm called to do. But I will tell you, when you redline in a career, especially in a high violent environment like Flint and a lot of, years of stacked on trauma, there's things that happen, you just go into work mode. But there's other cases that I thought, oh my gosh, this is like, this stands out. The first one was I had a family of 6 that all died from carbon monoxide poisoning, mom and dad, and, a baby, a 7-year-old, a 9-year-old, an 11-year-old. And that was the most death that I've seen in my entire life. And I actually became friends with the surviving parents who found their family. And to this day, I just saw them on Sunday. That's an immediate connection. But I remember coming home. It was on a Sunday after we processed the scene, and I picked up every one of the victims. It's the first time in my life that I've actually ever went to a funeral of people. And I sat there and I brought my wife and I brought my 2 boys. And it was almost like a bookend. Like I needed to be a part of this family. That was one that I remember coming home and just sitting in the chair and just like decompressing, thinking, I don't have the right to have a bad day. The second one was the most recent church shooting that we had at the Latter-day Saints Church here in Grand Blanc. I don't know if your listeners can remember that story, but on the 28th of September, we train for active shooters. We train for what to do. But on that day at a Mormon church, guy drove into the church with his truck and started shooting and lit the church on fire. And 4 people died, including the shooter, and 8 people seriously injured. Well, I knew that shooter since he was a baby, and I knew the family because they live in the community just next to us. And that whole moment of, seeing this thing happen and unfold, there was some processing that I had to have. Like, listen, this stuff can happen. And if you're not at your best, Chris, then you can't help anybody. And so it just, even after 33 years, it reminds me when you step into the ring of taking care of people, there are no days off.
How are you at accepting help yourself?
You know what? Today I was up at 5:30 in the morning and I jumped on a bike at 130-degree dry heat. And I love being in motion
Wait,
to
hold on,
gather
slow down,
my
wait, hold
thoughts.
on, but you had to be indoors somewhere. That was not
Yeah.
happening
Oh,
outside
yeah.
of Michigan. Okay.
Yeah, it's a dry sauna. Yeah, it's definitely not in Flint, Michigan. But I have a membership at this place called Hot Works, and it's 24/7, and they have infrared dry heat booths. And
Wow.
I jump on the bike, and that is my quiet. I love doing things like this, talking to you, because I know there's people that are tuning in whenever they hear this episode that just felt like their life was maybe in a rut or they felt down. And if I can breathe life into them, if something that you say breathes life into them, that's my validation. That's the balm for my soul.
And it's never going to be what we expect it to be, right? Because sometimes, like, we come up with this wonderful moment that we think is the moment that is going to connect with people, and then it's this other thing entirely. Sometimes it's a littlest of gestures, and you've had to have seen that in your travels working as a police officer.
Oh yeah. Especially over all these years, I've been able to pour my life into other people's lives and give people opportunities. I'm a king of second chances. We've all listening been given grace when we didn't expect it and mercy when we didn't deserve it. And when you have the ability, like me as the sheriff, I can help people get through dark seasons of their life and chapters that they think will never end. And then they come back to you or they write letters. We have a whole culture change in the jail called Ignite, which ironically, I was just in Oxford, England, April of this year with Jelly Roll. And we were presenting to 82 countries on literacy because we were able to change jail culture 5.5 years ago and reduce crime by 40% and reduce jail population by 100 and duplicate it throughout the country. Those are the things that, and when you get in positions of influence, you can really make things happen. And when I see those, we just had a graduation yesterday. 3 inmates graduated with a cooking degree that's federally recognized, and they had their chef uniforms on, they had their aprons on, and called Into Work. They were so proud. I don't even know why they were there. It doesn't matter. But while they were there, they got an education. So when they leave, whenever their journey takes them, they have something to go back and give to society. Those dudes had pride in their eyes. And I know that they're not going to reoffend, which means there's less victims and less trauma, and brokenness is restored and addictions are healed and mental illness is solved. I mean, that's the stuff that keeps me going.
There's a growth there, I think. And I was watching some of the videos online of what's happening, and it's really amazing.
Yeah.
And that's important to recognize what you just said is like that it doesn't have to be, you can break the circle. Let's talk for a second here. On May 30th of 2020 in Michigan at a Black Lives Matter, it started out what looked like a protest to me, but you turned it in, and I'm going to quote you here, you turned it into a parade and a march. Tell everybody what happened on that day and what your intention was when you went there.
Well, I appreciate you asking that because that was a defining moment in my whole life. As I said earlier, I'm 3rd-generation law enforcement. My dad and my grandfather were both involved in race riots in the city of Detroit. My dad in the 1967 riots. So it's in my background. This is how you respond because this is how we always do it. On May 25th, when George Floyd in Minneapolis, Minnesota was killed in broad daylight for 9 minutes by somebody who wore a uniform like I wore my whole life that looked like me, I know what I was thinking when I saw the video. Well, I had only been the sheriff for 5 months and 25 days at that point. I've been on the job since 93, but I just got appointed. So we were preparing for what was next. On the May 29th, cities across America started burning. On May 30th, we had a demonstration, a protest scheduled at the Target parking lot at 5 o'clock that day Eastern time. So I met with the team and I said, hey, they burned a sheriff's office on the West Coast. They burned CNN in Florida. They're going to light the city on fire. We just come off the water crisis. So we're going to prepare. We can take 1,000 people to jail. We have 1,200 flex cuffs. And we did the whole tactical briefing. That was at 2:00. 5:00, we were there. It was just an eeriness in the whole environment. We had our drones up, we had unmarked cars everywhere. It was just the calm truly before the storm. First car showed up within a few minutes, the next one within a few hours. The whole place was packed. There's 5 lanes. They marched to the east and to the west, and they were angry, as I was. But when they came back to the west around 7:15, they didn't stop where they started. They kept going, and they passed a big pumper fire truck at an intersection that led to our incident command at the Flint Township Police Department. And at that exact moment, everything changed because we knew their intention was not to protest anymore. We were getting the intelligence from social media. We knew where they had stacked rocks and Molotov cocktails, and there was going to be a clash and there was going to be bloodshed. Well, as they turned towards the incident command, everybody that was available got into their riot gear. So shields, batons, helmets, vests. And I remember, as the sheriff, we had done so many good things for the community. I remember walking up towards the crowd, was on the other side of the tactical line with the shields, batons. And I thought to myself, how did it get this bad? Like, how did it get so bad that some guy in Minneapolis has caused this grief here in Flint, Michigan? Well, for the sake of time, again, I walked up and I thought, there's got to be a better way. Absolutely wasn't planned, but I knew that there was going to be bloodshed on both sides, and there's got to be a better way. So I went to one of my guys who had a less than lethal shotgun, which shoots pepper spray into the crowd, and another guy that they shoot balls, rubber balls, like everything you see. And I thought, hey man, we're not going to shoot into this crowd. So I told my one guy, his name is Dobbs. This guy's been a Marine for 6 years and he's been in combat. I said, Ryan, tuck behind this car, man. I said, it sends a different message. He goes, Sheriff, look, they're all carrying guns. And I look in the crowd and people are carrying open firearms. So I'm thinking, this is bad. This is all happening in seconds. So long story short, I knew there was a pastor friend of mine, Jeff Hawkins. He was a black pastor that is just got a lot of street credibility. He lost 2 kids from 2 different homicides. And I had been his friend for a number of years. I decided to call him. And I said, where are you? And he goes, I'm in the crowd. And I look up and he's about 15 yards ahead of me. And I said, I'm coming for you. I don't know why, other than when you prepare in peace, you perform in chaos. And what I'm about to tell you, the world got to see what I've been my whole life. And I knew if I walked in there that wearing a helmet, it would potentially instigate. So I took my helmet off. I walked through the line of shields and batons, and I go grab Jeff Hawkins and give him a hug. At right that moment, one of the organizers of the protest came over, and I didn't even give him a chance to say hello. I said, hey, that guy in Minneapolis isn't who we are. I said, these guys are here to help you. I mean, you need to tell us what we need to do to calm this down. He goes, well, tell the people what you told me. I said, well, get their attention. He turns around and he's just said, hey, everybody, the sheriff wants to say something. I'm surrounded by hundreds of people with their phones out. And to you, imagine it's like a tennis match. So I said, what do you need us to do? He said, tell them what you told me. I said, get their attention. He got their attention. Now you put it back on me. And so this is all happening in nanoseconds. And so I said, hey, and that guy in Minneapolis isn't who we are. I said, these cops are over here to help you. I said, that cop over there gives hugs. I said, we got women, we got children here. I want to turn this into a parade, not a protest. Just trying to de-escalate the intensity that was happening. And I said, you need to tell us, and I'm telling you, I didn't even get the words out of my mouth, Steve. You need to tell us what we need to do. And they started chanting from their diaphragm, from pain, walk with us. And they started chanting. And again, we've all been to sporting events where you hear these cheers. This wasn't a cheer from the lungs. It was a chant from the belly of pain. And they got louder and louder, and they threw it back. And I watched that video now, even to this day, and I remember Swanson, just do the right thing, man. Just do the right thing. And I thought, what is the police going to think? What happens if this goes bad? I'm the only one here. And in 3 seconds, I said, let's walk. I said, we'll walk all night. And I just turned and I walked eastbound. And instantaneously, the people that were wanting us dead were coming up and saying, hey, can I get a picture? So nobody can tell me you can't unify somebody. I couldn't bring George Floyd back from the dead. I couldn't solve race problems. I changed the playbook instantaneously because it was the right thing to do. And let me tell you, as we walked back, that same Marine that I asked about putting his shotgun behind the car, I looked at him and I said, Ryan, is the police department safe? He goes, it's good. I said, where are the people? Because I just started walking and people started walking with me. And he said, they're all following you. And can I tell you, when we walked back to the original location, it took about an hour. Little did I know that people were dropping what they're doing because it was being live streamed and they wanted to be a part of this movement. We get back to the Target parking lot and it is full. There's not a place to stand or park. And I had met two guys, Johnny Franklin and Quan Adams, part of the organizers. And I say, when we get back there, I said, we need to speak to the people. So I'll get their attention. You guys talk. And then Pastor, you send us in prayer and we're just going to calm everybody down. And I kept high-fiving people saying, we're not going to burn the city. We're going to send a message. And sure enough, I got back and there was no place to stand other than a parking lot lamppost. And I stood on that post and I preached it. And I said, I can't fix everything, but I'm going to do my part. And can I tell you, that moment reached 3.2 billion people in 24 hours. We had 40 protests that summer and not a single person injured, nobody arrested, no businesses burned or looted. We sent a message, and it was the greatest day of my police career.
You had to have been so present in that moment. Do you remember that feeling? Because the video I watched of you do this, you you were right. I watched the video. I just watched it again earlier today before we spoke. It was instantaneous in you. And that is being present. That's living in the moment. Not, I'm going to say this thing. I got this thing prepped. This will happen and that'll happen. You were just living in your moment.
Yeah.
That feeling. Do you remember that feeling?
So, to be honest, there's two ways your body responds: parasympathetic response and sympathetic response. Parasympathetic is we live in this moment like we are right now, 99% of life. But the sympathetic is your fight or flight. That's the 1% where you're operating on autopilot. And I said earlier, the world got to see what I've been my whole life. The presence that I was in was the numerous complicated situations that I had been in before that moment my whole life. Everything is, and I look at it as our life is like a container, and what you put in and what you allow people to put in, when your cup is bumped, that's what comes out. That's what you've been when no one's looking. There's no phone a friend when your cup is bumped. You'll be exposed as to what you're out. So the presence that I was in was operating on instinct, because I prepared in peace to perform in that moment without even thinking. So the presence, when I look back, I'm telling you right now, it's been 5.5 years. And even telling the story, I get emotional. When I watch the video, I am like living it. And I know the guy in the video, and I still get inspired. Like, what was going on in your head? Because you could not plan for that. And we were outnumbered 50-1. And I thought, I am so grateful that I listened to the people and I set my ego aside and did the right thing.
It's also so incredible because I imagine that so much of your job as a police officer, even when you're talking about, being, somebody in traumatic situations, you get there after it happened most of the time, right?
Yes.
The post part. So here you are in the part where you have control, a degree of control, and you chose to make a positive move. And it was reciprocated back a millionfold. What?
Right?
How many billion you said watched it, which is so friggin' powerful and such a great message. The other thing I want to ask you, you're looking at all these protests that are happening around the world today, and especially in our nation, and how the government is responding to them. How do you feel watching those protests now after what you've experienced in your lifetime?
Yeah, it absolutely breaks my heart because I know that not everything's going to be solved the way it happened in Flint. But I want to point out that moments with momentum create movements. And if the executive leader creates a moment with momentum that has a divisive intention, it will create just as strong of a movement. And so when I see the things happening, when I look at what happened on January 6th at our nation's capital, one voice because I've seen it, has the ability to put the fire out or fuel the fire. And the voices that we align ourselves with have to be ones, in my leadership opinion, and what I build in is to unite people. You can't and you don't need to solve everybody's problem, but executive leadership is the key to carrying people on one path or the other. So when I see these things, when I see protests, when I see federal law enforcement fighting with local law enforcement, that is not who we are. When I see people that have different lifestyles or different faiths, and just mentioned the church shooting. We had a Christian attack a Mormon community. Like, these are the things that we cannot, as a country, we cannot just watch and justify. I wish I could go to all of these and say, hey, there's a better way to do this. It's not going to solve everything, but there is a better way. That's what when I see these, that's what comes out is I wish I could do more. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing on the grander scale, is to be a louder voice for good.
And in doing so, you have announced that you're a Democratic candidate for governor of 2026. I'm going to assume for the state of Michigan.
Yes.
Perhaps a different state. You leave it up to you. You are. I mean, listen. I can guess what your platform is here, but if you have to sum up your platform, what would you say your platform is?
I protect, I serve, and I unify. It's simple. And I just don't take care of a party, and I just don't follow policies that are divisive. But it's people over policy, policy over party, people over party. These are the things that people want. And so whatever means the most to you, I'm going to protect it. I'm going to serve like a leader's supposed to serve, and I'm going to bring people together. But I can't do it if I'm not in the game. That's why I'm giving my life to this.
Where do people find you online, and how do they follow you?
Well, there's a lot of different personalities out there for Chris Swanson. So you could find Sheriff Chris Swanson. You can find Ironman Chris Swanson. You can find Chris Swanson for governor. You can see Swanson leadership. You can go on my, YouTube and check out that TEDx talk on the walk. I want people to know that I built a social media network, and I do these kinds of interviews because I want people to know my heart. Unfiltered, unedited. Don't listen to a word I say. Watch what I do. So there's a lot of stories, a lot of bark on the tree that would give people a chance to be inspired and encouraged again. I promise you.
We close these shows with 2 questions. Don't panic. You know the answers. Question number 1, who inspires you?
Bobby Kennedy, 1968, with a bullet in his head. The last thing he said was, "Is everybody okay?" This is a guy that I visited his grave. I was just there 3 weeks ago. I had not seen his wife buried next to him, Ethel Kennedy. And he was a ruddy crime fighter. He was somebody who stood up and was bold. Bobby Kennedy.
And the final question is not a question. It's a statement to finish. Finish it any way you like.
Got it.
Goes like this. Tell me something good.
Wherever you are in life, highs and lows are temporary. So if you're on the top of the mountain, enjoy it, because it's temporary. If you're sliding down the hill and you wonder if it's going to stop, don't panic, it's temporary. And if you're in a storm, don't panic, it's temporary. And if you look at that, the law of averages, we have a great life. Everybody has struggles. Do your part. Do your part to do good in this world, and ready never comes. So start now.
Thank you, Sheriff Chris, for sharing your good journey. Next time on World Gone Good.
Get to holidays, to holly jolly days. You get to have them both, you lucky boy. Christmas and Hanukkah, Baruch Atah and fa la la la. You'll wind up with twice as many toys.
Well, yes, that is our Holidays Gone Good theme music, which we have done 5 in a row previously. But we're changing things up. Listen, we're all the way over in London now. We left the United States and jumped over the pond, so it's time to keep things changing up. And that is why on our next episode, you're going to hear a all new thing that we've come up with. I mean, other people have done it, but just let us have this, okay? It's called World Gone Good's Year in Review. We're going to bring you some of the best stories, the good stuff that has happened this year. And we're also going to feature some of our previous guests. And we have a couple new clips to share with you, including a bonus moment from this here episode with Chris Swanson featuring my pal, Mike Rust, and much, much more. Let's ring out the good new year together, or ring in the good new year together, I suppose, with our brand new episode, our Year in Review. I can't wait for you to hear it. Until then, be good.
'Cause tonight, a lot